We're back. Episode 18. Day-ish after the Rumble, Dan, correct?
Day after.
Day after the
Not even
Rumble.
day-ish.
Yeah, true. Day-ish. Day after the Rumble. Hmm. Would it be... Would it be hot to say that it did not live up to expectations?
Um,
Because at first glance, that's what it
I
felt like
think
on
it's
Twitter.
yeah, I mean, that's probably a way to say it. I think it just didn't live up to hype is probably the
Okay,
better
so
way.
got expectations, the hype of what it was supposed to be. That makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just because everything is so hype with them right now. That's part of the problem they're
Yeah,
having.
so
A
they're
good problem to have, but
yeah.
a problem nonetheless.
No, I get it. That makes sense. I was thinking about that all today. I don't. There are some people saying it was bad because it didn't live up to the hype, but I don't think it was bad.
I didn't think it was bad.
I
It just I don't know. I guess that's the problem because they've done so much recently and everyone expects something new, something different, some surprise. And the Royal Rumble is always a spot for surprises. And there weren't really all that many.
right,
There were a couple, not even a handful. There were
right,
like three.
right, right.
So with that, that just makes it a little bit tougher, I guess, for people because they probably thought, well, geez, look what they did at Survivor Series and look at what they've been doing with Raw and SmackDown and like other stuff that's going on. And they're also allowing some of the outside stuff with like the Tony Khan stuff with Jinder and Hook and all that, which really wasn't from WWE's perspective wasn't a big deal at all, but WWE fans made it a big deal, right?
Yeah,
But like WWE really didn't do anything with that except for Jinder's one tweet, which was just funny, really. And you know, um, that created a little bit of a stir that then became like, oh, Jinder's back in the main event picture, which I guess in a way he was, right, for a few weeks.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, sure, but like, it's not like he's not held the title before. When they were pushing to get the India show, they put the title on him, right? That's what it was for.
yeah,
So
no, for
like,
sure.
so
I
like,
think
he's
it's
had
just
a
more of like he kind of came out of like
yeah,
I mean I don't really care either way like in general like but the whole idea of like he hasn't won a match or whatever and he just walks in and get a championship match like that doesn't bother me.
no,
I guess it bothers some hardcore fans but like that'll never really bother me for the most part. But what I wouldn't even say bother me, but what I would question more about that is where has he been? And he walks in and gets a title shot. He's not. I know he's been a champion before, but he's also not Brock Lesnar walking back in and immediately getting a championship shot. He's not a spectacle, right? Like he's whatever. Yeah, he's a former champion, but I don't know. That's the only thing I would have said about
well,
that. But I didn't care that they gave him a
yeah,
shot. Like
he bounced back from being from the manager role that he started back in like May of 23.
yeah, with like
So
Veer and
yeah,
right, like
and for the India Shear, I think it is. So he's still involved. It's not like he was disappeared. He just wasn't full time wrestling, which is fine because I'm not a fan of when Tony takes these odd matchups of somebody you never heard before, and then all of a sudden they're going with Kenny or they're going with Kingo, and it's like, well, how is that any different? Like in the eyes of WWE, Jinder has served a purpose of when they were pushing for India, he had the title for a
sure.
while, so
Yeah,
he did what he was
for
supposed
sure.
to. But that's a different
He just
rant for
hadn't
a different
wrestled. He
day.
just really hadn't
Yeah,
wrestled a lot, right? Like I'm looking at his matches. He had a few live, non televised matches, fine, but
yeah,
prior to prior to um prior to the Seth Rollins thing, his last televised match was an NXT TV taping in March of 2023.
Yeah.
So that's what I don't care what his record is or that he hasn't won a match, like whatever, like who cares? Like mine was more of like where have you been and you walk in and get a match and you're just not the guy that walks in and gets a match. That's what I guess my point is, but
No, I
again,
get
I
it.
say that I say that not really caring either that he got a match. I that's just what I think, but it didn't bother me. Like this isn't like the real world's championship all over again for me.
Yeah, it just got blown out of control because people who haven't showered in a while got upset about it. But
Um and Tony got upset about it. But like so that back to that point, like that was something that WWE fans at least got behind as like a little mini movement for a few weeks, right?
yeah, because
To
it
get
pissed off
behind
Tony.
right? And so all of a sudden it was like, yeah, Ginger's back, baby, he can win. Like all of a sudden, it just created this narrative out of nowhere. It actually worked very well to create a story, which was, all done through just BS because Tony opened his mouth, which I have no
Well, and
idea why he did that. Like,
Jinder came out with
just
a
dumb.
new T-shirt shortly after that. Don't hinder Jinder.
Yeah,
So
right. Yeah, so like
good for him.
it created the narrative that made the match more interesting.
Yeah,
Is what it did without them trying.
yeah.
So that was great. Um,
You want to start
so yeah,
talking?
I guess that's what it is though. It just
It's the hype.
it's just a hype that they thought like they were gonna make something out of everything they do now. And I guess people need to remember they don't need to do that. They can just
No,
put
but
on
it's just
a
something we
decent
want,
show.
right? Like it's something we obviously want. I going into this, I thought they were gonna have something up their sleeve for Rumble just because it's the Rumble. And then I thought the one in Australia would be awesome for the people in Australia because it's their first televised pay-per-view there. But I thought it would card wise it might be a little bit of a letdown for us that's been watching because I figured that's the show you give the letdown so then you ramp back up again going into Mania.
Yeah.
But who knows? Like this might have been the bridge pay per view, which is wild to consider they are using Rumble as a bridge pay per view now to give them
Yeah,
a
that
ramp
would be
up
wild.
to Chamber, and then all of a sudden they go even hotter then from Chamber to Mania. But I mean, at the same point, I don't think saying it was bad is the
I don't think
correct
so either.
description of this pay per view. I think it served its purpose.
Yeah.
And I think if you get a wrestling pay per view that serves this purpose with dedicated storylines, you have to consider it was good. Yeah, it didn't
Hmm.
hit what you wanted to hit, but it did its job. And that's kind of
Hmm.
what you want for a wrestling storyline to always do, right? You want it to continue down the tracks and hit what it's supposed to hit, and then ramp up when it's supposed to. And we should be expecting it to ramp up right soon with Bania. So we could just
Yeah.
start off talking about the card, small card. I mean, if obviously, we had some debate prior to the card. If Seth was healthy, would he be the fifth match on this card? I think he would be. I think there would be
Yeah, I
something
think so
involving
too.
Seth that would be there. I don't know who it would be, but I definitely think Seth would be wrestling if his knee was not basically torn to shreds. Um, did you see Charlotte backstage? By the way, she's
I
walking
saw a
around
video.
fine with the brace on,
Yeah, I saw the video of her lubing up Andrade before he went
spraying him
out.
with the
Yeah.
oil in the water.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, she might break Aaron Rodgers' record now. The way she's walking around on that thing.
I don't
Um,
know. We'll see.
so Fauci will be
I don't know.
happy with that. Um, but yeah, women's Royal Rumble. Bailey takes it. It seems like it was a weird reaction in the crowd at first, but then it seems like they loved it. And the best thing I could say about this is if anybody tuned in to Hunter's press post conference when he was talking about Bailey, he kind of shared the same sentiments that I brought up on a prior podcast of ours, where like I feel a lot of wrestling fans are taking her for granted, because she's the perfect superstar to throw in any type of match that you need to get over, and she gets the job done. She's not like it's not flashy all the
Right.
time, but she knows how to perform. She knows what is needed out of her 10 out of 10 times. I mean, were there some sloppy incidents in the Rumble? Sure. But there was quite a few first time entrants that nerves have to be crazy, right? Like they must be butterflies all over the place. Like running down the ramp into the Rumble of all being your first pay per view. That's, I mean, you're building a legacy there, but it's like, that's crazy. Like that is a crazy, crazy start. Um, I'm glad she got it. I mean, I obviously think this is gonna go towards the storyline of her cashing in, or sorry, not cashing in. Whole different preview of her taking the title off of Io Sky. I think. I don't think she's gonna go after Rhea. I'll be very surprised. Um, I think I could see if Rhea needs time off or they need to build something. I do believe Bailey is one that can do that for them with Rhea because she's been in matches where she's taken a beating, like the old NXT matches with Sasha when she's been with Asuka. Like she's taken a pounding in some matches and still told a good story. Um, I don't know. What's your thoughts? I mean, I could see it going either way. I think they're gonna obviously lean towards more of an internal feud within the stable storyline. Bailey being kicked out because their plan went broke at the Rumble, so she chases Io then, I guess, or Io starts to get a little bit panicked that Bailey has that shot. But yeah, what's your thoughts on B- B- Bailey in the women's Rumble, good, bad, and ugly here?
I mean, I thought it was fine. The Rumble in general, right? It started really slow. Even though they
Yeah,
had some surprises early, it just started a little slow. Um, and then it got much better as it went on, and then it ended pretty hot, I thought. Um, I don't have any issues with Bailey winning it. I think they do like create a story where she decides to go after Io. Um, and that they can get her out of damage control and then see what happens.
yeah, I think because the camera guy made it such a point when Bailey kept yelling, "What's the plan now? What's the plan now?" So obviously, for anyone that's been watching wrestling longer than a year, they're gonna go back to that. If something failed, is it her fault? She failed. Blah blah blah. You just want the shot at Io, and then they're gonna go from there, right? So, but
Yeah.
I don't. We got Jade. We received Jade.
We did get Jade. We did get Jade. She looked good.
She looked good. She had that one fumble on the pump handle slam, I think, but she dropped her to she brought her to the mat to pick her up over her head again. So obviously,
Yeah. She
with that,
fixed it.
yeah, with that minor screw up, and then you pick them from the ground up over your head, I'm pretty sure everybody forgives that type of slip up. Um,
Yeah.
I thought they were gonna let Zoe Stark have a bigger showing than she actually did because Hunter talks about her as much as he can, but I think we're getting to um I think we're getting to a stage with the women superstars that WWE have now that they're having long hard discussions on like who are we pushing and why, because they have a lot of great athletes now. A lot of great athletes. Like like the cult following that Roxanne Perez has, you can obviously push her and everybody will be behind it. Tiffany Stratton, as we saw, the crowd loved her. She's an
Hmm.
athlete. She didn't have any screw ups in the ring. She knows what she's doing. She's confident in it. I mean, Jade speaks for itself. They gave her. Did they give Jade the Big Show nickname, or was that Bianca? Because you brought it up.
No, I brought up about Nia Jax
Oh,
being
that's
given
sorry.
the
Yeah.
Andre
So yeah. So
Andre the Giant treatment.
yeah, right there. So Nia Jax as well. And then you can always go back to Bailey and Becky. And then you throw Naomi in there now because you kind of did the crossover about her and Jordan kept fighting for the TNA title because they both held it.
Yep.
So right there, you have 7 women that you can put in the top spot. And I think everybody would be okay with one of those 7. I don't think there would be any issues.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I don't think I'd. Oh, I apologize. And you have Asuka. I didn't even bring that up. Like 8. So it's like. And then if Jordan Grace's contract runs out again, you make the call. 9. Like. But I'm glad Hunter did that crossover. I know people have some issues with what he did later on after the pay-per-view that we could talk about. But I'm glad we got to see her. Her political rants on Twitter get a little crazy sometimes, but as a superstar, she's it, right? Like,
yeah.
And there was a question I wanted to pose to you about this. So Jordan Grace has been this type of Jordan Grace for a while now, right? For at least 2 to 3 years, right? Like, just being the top of TNA, the top of wherever she goes. I think she did a couple death matches. Is it weird that WWE is the first one to reach out to get her and not AEW at all?
Well, AEW, I think, for whatever reason,
Like,
they had that deal with TNA or Impact at the time for a while. They did a lot of crossover, and then something broke down, and they just stopped doing it. So I think that's why. I think it's just something must have happened. I only guess. I don't remember there being any specifics, but something must have happened where that working relationship broke down, and now they only have it with New Japan, and
it's
so
just
and he uses Ring of Honor like it's a different promotion in a way. So
yeah, that's wrestling at the mall at this point in time. It's absurd to me, right? Because one of the biggest complaints about AEW is they're doing nothing with the women that they have on the roster. So, like, you're telling me you can't mend fences with TNA to be like, listen, what do we have to do to get Jordan here to get the big pop? Like, you know what I mean? What do we have to do to get Naomi here? Like, just imagine if they did some co-working event and they got Jordan and ex-WWE superstar Naomi to show up at AEW. Now, that's kind of a small slight to WWE. It's like, you couldn't keep her, but we got her to pop over. Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe this is me being hypercritical of Tony, but I just feel like that's a missed opportunity. Like, because we said for how long now that division is suffering, right? Especially when Britt Baker goes on Twitter and says, I'm not getting any TV storyline, or we don't know, but right? Like, it's been suffering.
Missed opportunity, maybe, but it might not be an opportunity that's available. There's nothing he can do if Impact doesn't want to work with them anymore.
Yeah, but
like something stopped, right?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Like, for us not to know, hopefully it's not anything that a bridge couldn't be mended, because then, I'm not one to burn bridges. You know what I mean? So, like, but I don't know. But yeah, I was impressed. Jordan was awesome. I used to have the TNA Jordan figure, and then it got stolen out of my apartment when I was moving. So, that kind of sucks. But side note, Nia strong. Dan's gone.
Nope, I'm here.
Oh, broken camera again. Oh, they just gave you the Vince McMahon treatment, taking off everything. What do you think about Nia? She looks
She
strong,
looked
right?
good. I mean, they definitely booked her strong.
She's
She
obviously
looked real good.
they do a women's chamber, right?
I think so. Yeah,
You
I think
obviously
they're
have
going to. They have so.
you obviously have to put her in there, right?
Yeah,
And it has to be
I would
for
think so.
Rhea, because it's not believable if she's going after Io Sky. Because
Yeah,
Rhea's
probably not, but I don't know. Who knows what they do? I mean, I guess it depends on. It's going to be. I assume it's going to be similar for both men and women. Whoever the winner, the Rumble winner, doesn't pick is where Elimination Chamber heads, right?
yeah.
So
You said this last.
so
Yeah.
right, like Cody's going to go for Roman. We already have seen that or heard that. Um, So yeah, and we just assume Bailey's gonna go for EO. So then, yeah, that's what it will be. It'll be interesting to see who else they put in it. I mean, Jade had a pretty decent showing too. Maybe they put her in it.
Yeah, and they could put Bianca because that'll further build the feud of Jade versus Bianca.
Mm-hmm.
Don't mind that at all, and our friend in our group chat wouldn't mind that at all as well. He would actually be very happy. All three
Yeah.
inches of happiness. Um. So yeah, it it was good. Um. I was a fan of what they did. I was surprised they brought Naomi out so early. I thought that was definitely going to be like. I always think that they bring surprises out past number 10. For some reason, that's just something I've always thought about when I watch these. But yeah, I thought it was good. I'll give it like a solid B. What do you think, Dan? Is there anything else you want to talk about at the women's match?
No, nothing specific. I assume the reason, just the only thing I'll say, I assume the reason they put Naomi a little bit earlier was just to give her that entrance.
True. That's a good point. I
You know,
forgot about that. True. Very
takes a
true.
little bit longer with what she does. Um,
Yeah.
Because one thing they were doing was moving those wrestlers in quick.
Yeah.
That was
That
that
wasn't.
wasn't
Yeah,
even close to
no.
90 seconds half the
Right.
time. So, uh, and from what I had read, the match went over by 10 minutes to begin with. So, and that was with them like pumping through quickly.
So you think
So,
the Rumble is the hardest one for them to time out? Just because of
I
everybody
mean,
that's involved? Because I thought that for years now.
I'm sure it's a little bit more difficult because you're working with multiples and there is an order to elimination to a
Yeah.
degree, right?
Right.
So you really have to be on it timing wise. I mean, they also have all the referees out there to give timing cues. um
Yeah.
and
Around the ring.
but right, and like for the most part, they never like to have more than seemingly anymore, at least more than like 7 or 8 people at any given time, unless they're going to do a few quick eliminations. Then they build it up a little more. But yeah, I'm sure it's very hard to time, um, because you have to get through, you know, let's say 26 eliminations to get to your final four, and then that's when we see what happens. Now with the women's one, right? They ended that part pretty quickly with the way they did the eliminations at the very end. But yeah, it's probably got to be really hard.
I would say so.
But I would agree with you. I would give it a B as well.
Yeah, I thought it was good. Um, I thought it was a little bit weird that they didn't bring a legend from the past. Um, but then again, maybe they felt like we said with the men's, maybe they felt like they didn't have to, and that's why. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, so yeah. On from that, let me get my notes here real quick. We went to this was the fatal. No, was not the fatal. Yeah, was the fatal 4-way, right?
Yes. Fatal
Fatal
Four-Way was
4-way.
second.
Sorry about that. Yeah, fatal 4-way. I'll let you start with this. Thoughts?
Um, I mean, it was fine. It had some good spots to it. It ended exactly how we called at the beginning of like, there were going to be a bunch of finishers and then Roman would sneak in to do something like, and Roman took every finisher from each person and then, had something, something happen to avoid a 3 count. And then at the end, you know, snuck out with a victory, which was what we expected. So it was fine. It was good. There were a couple of good spots. It wasn't anything special. The one thing I feel like, and there's not a ton of examples, but I just feel like the last like few matches, which I guess spans over like 8 months with Roman for the last few that he's done, like he's just looked not as dominant as they had him. So I don't really understand why they're not still booking him to win these matches dominantly so that it makes it all that much sweeter when he gets beat finally. Like if that's going to be WrestleMania and Cody, then fine. But he didn't look like he was dominant yesterday, and even when he was fighting Jay, right? Their tribal match from a while back, and I just feel like he just hasn't been looking dominant at all anymore. And then he's just squeaking out with these victories. So I don't know what that's gaining other than it's just different from when he was just like literally, I mean, to steal his own line, just like smashing everyone, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, like
So
all his like super marquee matches were good long matches where he was like, taken to task, like his matches with Brock and his WrestleMania match with Cody. But the in between stuff, like I mean, if you go all the way back to Edge and Daniel Bryan, right? Like he pinned them both, right? Like, and I don't know, it's just weird to me why it's like that.
yeah, I was thinking about that. So if we're talking outside the ring, right? I did bring up a couple times like how he did not look like he was in the best shape
Yeah.
compared to like how he looked in the past. Like in the past, when he walked down with that lay on and he was in his boots and his combat pant, like he looked like, oh, that's the guy. Like that is the guy. But it's tough for now that I'm thinking about more about it. It's tough for when he comes out and then he's standing face to face with somebody like Orton, and Orton looks like, oh, that's the champion that's defending. You know what I mean? Like just the way that Orton came back and he looks like a Greek statue at this point in his career, and it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and I mean,
It doesn't. So, um,
yeah.
back to when you were saying like smashing. Are you like comparing this back to when he basically just put Brock over the stairs in Madison Square Garden when he was standing over that, like that peak type
Well, like that time
Roman?
too, but yeah, like all these matches, like any like basically all his matches except for the major four show matches that when he was wrestling pretty much all the time,
Yeah,
he was just running through guys and he was literally like, that's when like the God mode started, right? Like
yeah,
needle mover, God
yeah.
mode,
He operates
right?
on a
Like
different level.
right.
Yeah,
And it was like, and back then when we talk about it, it would be who's going to beat him? Because it was like nobody is
yeah,
believable to beat him right now with the way he was being booked. And maybe that's why they did it a little bit, but it's like, I don't know. His match last night, I'm trying to think of what was his other matches. He just hasn't looked dominant at all. And you're still like trying to talk about him, with the record breaking and where he is with the streak of days and all the people he's gone through, except for the fact that, like, he almost always needs outside interference to win.
within the last
And
year, right? Like that's been the thing.
right, right. And B, like, he hasn't looked all that dominant. So, LA Knight, Crown Jewel. There we go. LA Knight. He didn't look dominant in that
No,
match
and he
against LA
almost
Knight.
lost without the foot being put on the rope.
Right. Um, the Sami Zayn match in Montreal, right? Another one, and like I understand there were reasons to let those guys show strong too, but you would have thought it would have ended with him dominating. You know, he could be dominated for 10 minutes and then go on a run of 5 minutes and just wipe the guy out and beat them. You know, but they didn't do that. So the same thing, tribal combat with Jey Uso. Um,
You think that storyline? You think that's them
I
preparing
don't know
for
what it
Cody?
is. I mean, I guess, but I don't necessarily understand that. Why not make him look like he's unbeatable again so that when he's finally beat, like, it's, I don't need him to not be dominant to believe that eventually somebody can go
Yeah, but
take him to task in a 30-minute match, right? Like, that's what it has to be. It has to be like last year's WrestleMania. It has to be a long match that is brutal, and eventually you wear him down by staying with him. You're not necessarily beating him, you're staying with him until you wear him down, and then you finally capitalize and you finally get over the hump. And, you know, that's how you take a beating and just not get knocked out or whatever. But that he's just not that guy right now.
no, I get it. I think it's storyline just based on the reaction that you saw um, after the match when Paul was talking to him in the ring. Because he was doing like the big eyebrows and like the big like gas for air, like he was exhausted. He was doing like the shock look where he kept throwing his hair up over his face and staring at the title. Like he couldn't believe that he survived this and he took all this. So I think I just, I don't know. To me, this is something I've been noticing on and off, but I think it dates back to when there are starting to be cracks in the bloodline. And like to them, this is probably something that complements the fact that there's cracks in the bloodline. Is that okay? The bloodline doesn't have everybody they used to have anymore. There's there's internal feud that still goes on because Solo still is like hesitant on some things that he's asked to do. And then because of the cracks, now it looks like Roman's not the guy standing on that foundation that he used to stand on anymore. And it's kind of, to me, it's kind of like them just flipping the clock with this sand in it over and starting. Okay, this is when Roman gives it up. Like this is. So I get it. It's probably a personal perspective thing, but I
That's
did
I mean
notice it.
that's very subtle if they're doing that purposely.
Yeah, but
The cracks in the bloodline fine, but that shouldn't, you know, that like I don't know how that impacts his ability to dominate in the ring like he once was. Like all that should really do is stop them from interfering so much or thinking twice or whatever. I don't know, and they're not telling that story now. If over the next 2 months we get Cody coming out and pointing out that he's not dominating as much anymore, okay, then it might make a little more sense to me.
yeah, I mean,
It's just that's very subtle, I think, if that's what they're trying to do.
yeah, I get it, but I mean, I don't mind it. I can kind of see it that way just based on the fact of like he's been focusing on the bloodline and the issues affecting the bloodline because there's been a handful of times within the last six matches of his prior or leading up to him, he's basically told the bloodline like take care of your stuff. I got my own stuff to worry about. So it kind of seems like mentally he's maybe not there. That and I feel like this is a prototypical like stable functionality script that we've seen before in the past, right? Is that the stable gets so big, so hot, they're leading. All of a sudden, small cracks start to hit. Then it starts to fall apart a little. Then they drop titles. Then they're kind of fighting each other. It's kind of what we thought was going to happen with Judgment Day, right? We didn't think Judgment Day would bounce back and come get the tag titles. We didn't think Dom would go to NXT, get that North American title, is it? I think we didn't think Rhea would just go out there and put on a devastating performance against Charlotte. Like we didn't think those things were happen. So it seems like
Right.
they started to do that with the Judgment Day, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, we're flipping the script with Judgment Day." So I mean, yeah, I guess it's a subtle thing, and it doesn't really need to happen, but it's probably just what the writers saw in the process, right? Like they probably they probably all agreed this is something that we can do. Um, and then just went for it. In ring though, I didn't think it was bad. Orton still looks good. I can't believe he's giving
Mhm.
out the RKOs like he's giving out the RKOs when they said one of the big issues with his back was how often he was giving out RKOs, and it looks like it doesn't even phase him anymore. It just he
Right.
looks. I got a little bit worried afterwards when he was sitting there on the side and he kept like grabbing his shoulder. I'm hoping that's not anything there, but he never really took his hand off his shoulder to. So I'm just hoping he was milking that to give a little bit to the crowd of like, oh my god, is he hurt again? Rather than like he's fine. But
Yeah.
um, were you expecting more from AJ in this?
No, not in particular.
I think I was expecting a little bit more from AJ since he went back to this like badass feel of like he's a Sons of Anarchy guy now with the black leathers. He went back to his New Japan boots of having the big white one on the boot. Like I thought for sure we were just gonna get some crazy AJ stuff, but the TRT might not let him give us crazy AJ with how big he is. Why are you shaking your head?
I don't know. It's always your answer for a guy who gets bigger.
TRT?
Yeah.
Yeah, past the age of 40, Dan. That's probably what happened. Um, you should try some. Um,
No thanks.
and what did you think with LA Knight?
I thought. I mean,
Did
he
what he
got
was
some
supposed
good.
to?
Yeah, I mean, I think him and AJ did what they were supposed to do together. Like, I think this was more gonna feature Roman and Randy. Like, it almost didn't need to be a four way. Like, they
I
probably
was,
could have just let Randy have it, like, and just let Roman go over on Randy and just have a good match. But so and it's tougher. Like, it's funny because like it's so much different when you add the fourth guy, right? Like, because a triple threat you can work through pretty well.
yeah. Fourth is damn near
You add a
impossible.
fourth guy, yeah, and it just makes it's such a different dynamic. Um,
Well, because the rings are already so small, right? So like three guys, they can kind of map it out. Four, you got two guys operating in half of the ring all the time. So it's like what like they really have to be detailed to what they want to do in each segment of it compared to three. If you were doing the three way instead of a fatal four way, who would you have done to get the best
um,
result out of it?
Probably Randy and LA Knight.
I think so too. I think you could have dropped AJ and nobody would have cared. And it's
Yeah.
wild that we're at that part of AJ's career, right? Like that's wild. I didn't think we would get to a part of AJ's WWE career where we would be having that. But then again, I don't think we ever thought WWE would be this stacked.
I was gonna say, like, I was just gonna say that, like, it's just different because there's so much going on and there's so many people and it is very stacked. So that's what's gonna happen, right? Like, some people are just not going, they're not going to care quite as much about a few people, right? Like, and I think to a degree, LA Knight is feeling a little bit of that too. Like, with everything else going on, like, yeah, you know they still pop when they see him and stuff like that a little bit, but it's not like it was. It's definitely not like it was for him a few months ago. He was just like skyrocketing,
Yeah,
and
and it
then
kind of flattened out, right?
all these things happened, and yeah, he just plateaued. He didn't go down necessarily, but he plateaued for sure.
Yeah,
That's that's what happens when you've got so much going on,
it's tough, right?
and you're bringing back people, and and like the Punk thing, I guess, like changed the trajectory for a bunch of people, right? Just because he just became this like crazy story because and part of it might be, to be honest, some people are looking to see if he cracks and screws up, right?
Well, that's
Like,
what they want,
and
right?
right, and every day that you get a feel good story or a feel good video and he's doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing, and now he's in, now he's in the Rumble, and he has a good Rumble, and he doesn't win it, which like might have been like something that seemed like what they would do. He doesn't win it, but he's second. He's the last guy eliminated, and it's just like everybody is invested in that, and these other guys are just plateauing because of it, because we're still waiting what's next
Yeah,
on
agreed.
him.
Agreed. I agree.
It's it's such a feel good story for him and for WWE, so it's just tough. It's just tough.
I agree. Yeah, yeah, I mean you hit that perfectly on the head. I don't think LA Knight dropped. I just think it kind of plateaued. Like he still gets the reaction from the crowd when it's like a one-on-one thing or he comes out to do a promo. It's just you put him in the ring with Reigns and Orton, he's not gonna get that same spike that he got, right? Like that's tough for him to
Right.
get that spike because it's like, yeah, we like him, but these two guys we're watching right now are certified Hall of Famers. Like, and this is the big thing. Yeah, so it was
Yep.
good. Roman retains. Probably not going to see him at Elimination Chamber, right?
I don't. I
I
don't think so.
I think there was
I
a
don't
statement
know.
about it already, but let me look. If he's not at Elimination Chamber, do you do something with Paul to have Paul there at least?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, you could tape something. You don't necessarily have to
Well,
have him there.
that's what I mean. Like have Paul involved in some form.
Maybe.
A lot of this,
I mean, when you look at WWE's website for Elimination Chamber, they're not even showing Roman in the graphic. I mean, but granted, they are showing Seth, but that was probably prior to the injury. But it's LA Knight, Logan Paul, CM Punk, Bianca, Cody, Rhea, and Seth are on this main deal, and are listed on WWE's event website as featured superstars.
yeah,
You don't even have Roman listed.
no, it's wild, right? Like it's definitely like a different sort of feel for sure. Um, I don't think we're gonna see him. I think I don't know. It's crazy. When do we got? We got to the end of February, right? So we got basically a month.
Yeah, February 24th. Yep.
Yeah. So I think they can ramp something up by then to get everybody hyped. It's gonna be
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure they will. I mean, right off the bat, the Elimination Chamber matches can be really cool to watch. So, like, depending on what you're doing, and like you have a bunch of storylines from the Rumble that you can use, right? Like, right off the bat, like Cody doesn't need to be in the chamber, um,
nope.
but knowing them, he might be. But he doesn't need to be in the chamber at all. So I don't know what you're doing with him unless you're having somebody come out and continue to challenge him leading to WrestleMania. So maybe a singles match for him. Um, and then the chamber, right? Like you're probably picking up storylines right from the Rumble or from the four way. You got three guys right there that just took a loss, right?
Throw
And
them in the
didn't
chamber.
really, right? They didn't really settle anything.
I don't know if I want to
With
see AJ in the chamber.
well, maybe it doesn't have to be AJ, right? Like,
Yeah, I
but
don't. I don't
yeah.
mind putting Orton and Knight in there with say Drew or something and Gunther or something. But I don't know if I need to see AJ, right? Like I don't think I don't think AJ makes this any more fresher. So I would like to see what they could do if they took him out and see Montez Ford back in the chamber. He put on a show last time,
Yeah, that's true.
crawling like Spider-Man. Like so, yeah, it was good. I think we kind of expected Roman to retain on to Mania now. The road to WrestleMania starts yesterday, Dan, as Hunter said. Side note, what do you think about the shot of Punk? Oh, sorry, I was just on the phone with Larry.
Oh, I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah. You think they
I
gave
think
him a green light to do all that stuff? Like just to,
my guess is that
as
they
long as it doesn't
probably,
cross the line. I mean,
yeah, my guess is they've probably told him like, do what you do, just don't do anything stupid, and like, you know what we mean when we say stupid, right? Like
yes,
the other day on couple of weeks on Raw, right? Like he randomly walked up after his promo to what's his face, Wade Barrett, right? And while the camera shots on him, and he goes, "Bet on me, I'm winning the Royal Rumble," right? And he said it into his mic, like so that the broadcast heard it. Like that kind of stuff, I think they probably aren't necessarily scripting or planning as much as they're just saying, like, "Yeah, do something," like right, like he. I mean, I don't want to skip ahead, but he does a pedigree in the Rumble, and then you hear him say,
yeah,
"Yeah, you can't believe I just
you
did
did
that
that
shit,
shit.
can you?" Right? Like, I'm sure that wasn't scripted. Maybe the pedigree was, but not the comment after.
Yeah, and the smile he gave with it too, just kind of like
Because it's
solidify.
a perfect nod to this whole story of him and Triple H, mending fences, right? Like, and he does this all the time. Well, all the time since he came back. He's been doing these nods to other people. He did it in AEW with Cena, right? He did the 5 moves of doom in AEW. He also did the "You Can't See Me," didn't he? You
He's
know,
he's
he
done that before in WWE as well, like his
right,
first run. Yeah, he's
right.
done it a lot of times. He's done the
Right. And then, he had some shout outs like, early on in his feud with MJF, and he shout out at the Miz and stuff like that. Like he just does that to his friends. And like think about when he came back, and I don't know if it was scripted or not. I'd like to believe it wasn't because it makes it funnier. When they had the backstage segment with Kofi, and he was like, "Wait, you're not Jamaican anymore," or something
yeah,
like that. And Kobe's like, no, I don't do that no more. I don't
yeah,
do that no more.
yeah.
And like, that was just hilarious. And if that was unscripted, like it just is so much better because like it's so funny. It's quote unquote breaking the fourth wall a little bit, even though that's kind of like that fourth wall's been gone for years. Um, and just hilarious. And anyone who knows anything about that would get a kick out of that. So, my guess is Hunter is smart enough to know sometimes those off the cuff things are 10 times better if they're not scripted.
Well, and especially with Punk, right?
Yeah,
Like especially with Punk, like because like we've heard before when like they've given um writers have come up to him with like flashcards of material in the past, and he's looked at it, torn up in front of him, and threw it out. And like they've been told, like when he was angry, depressed, like hurt Punk, they've been he's told them to their face, I don't need anybody writing for me, like that type of thing.
hmm
So yeah, it's he brings it right. Like he still like he could still do that. Like he could still like just you know throw something in there and it just kicks up the event a little bit. Just turns up the volume. Um, yeah, I'm definitely turning in tomorrow just because I want to see. Like he has to be on there, right? There's no way he's not on after getting beat at the
I
Rumble.
yeah. I mean, my guess is you probably have Bailey and Punk get their little deals. I mean,
Yeah,
Bailey and Cody get
of
something.
of two they're picking. Yeah,
Probably start the show with Cody, right? Maybe you start the 9 o'clock hour with Bailey or Punk or whatever. Like, but yeah, Punk is somewhere
he
there,
has
I
to be
think,
in there. I think.
because you have to hear what's next too,
Yeah, you have to
right?
the plan, right? Like that's what we're waiting for. Is like, okay, how is this unfolding in Australia? Um, Another side note: do you think that 4:30 start time for us hurts the pay per view?
Um, I think it hurts its if they care about its live streaming
Which I don't
like
think they do.
numbers. I don't think it matters to them because it's not like they get any less or more money. That's why I think the Netflix deal is genius too, because like what do they really care
Yeah,
now that it's signed? Um So I'm sure it hurts its initial viewership because, I don't know how many people are going to get um, up at 4:30 to watch it. I mean, honestly, well, I didn't say you wouldn't or I wouldn't necessarily, but
I think there'd
um,
be more than you expect. It's it's WWE.
yeah, I mean, maybe. I,
Um,
ironically, what I think might be more likely to happen is people just never going to bed until after it's over.
that's
It's
yes, that's
almost it's almost early enough
to do it.
that you could just pull an all-nighter, do whatever you're doing, watch it, and then go to bed, which I did years ago for the World Cup.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I just didn't go to sleep because the USA game was on at like 4 or 4:15 or something. And instead of going to bed at midnight like I normally would, it was like I just took a nap and was up at 11 o'clock at night and just stayed up until whatever, and then fell back to sleep after the match ended. But um, so yeah, I mean, I think it hurts from what it would be if it was, you know, 8 o'clock Eastern time or 7 o'clock or whatever.
Yeah, I could see it. I could definitely see it. Yeah, I'm pumped for that because I mean this might prove that I'm a sociopath, but the time frame of when it's occurring gives me a little bit more juice of like excitement to be like, all right, yeah, I got to be up for that because I want to watch it live. Like just the fact it's the first Australia show, I want to watch it live. I know you don't care about that stuff. You're kind of dead inside, but um, you know,
I mean, I don't feel the need. I don't feel any extra juice because it's starting at 4:30. I generally don't like
who hurt you?
the like.
Like,
Nobody hurt me. I generally don't like the noon starts we get for Saudi Arabia. Like I don't know, it's
yeah,
just a
it's a
weird
weird time.
time.
Yeah,
So I mean, I prefer an early morning start versus a noon start. So I'll take that
yeah.
for sure. Um, but I don't necessarily get any extra juice for it being on at 4:30 in the morning.
Well, I could get up, watch it, and then take the wife to breakfast. So worked for me.
Well, I could get up, watch it, take myself to breakfast, I
Oh
suppose.
wow, we're going down this depressive track again. Okay, Lonely Dan.
Well, you
No
know,
wonder
you're
you're
the only
so
one
born.
would say I'm dead inside.
Well, you're not bringing the vibe tonight, Dan. You're not bringing the vibe. That's all.
I'm saving it for an argument about the press conference.
Okay, okay. Um, so after that, we had when was Logan and KO? That was after that, right? Yeah, Logan and KO after the four way.
Yep.
I thought that was good. I would give that a solid B plus to an A.
The ending, I thought the ending was great.
Yeah, kind of a because everybody like retweeted
You don't
that
see that.
ref's face and said, "Oh, now they pay attention to
Yeah.
Knuckles in the ring." So I thought that was funny. Everybody was calling that out.
Right.
But yeah,
You never see that,
no.
right? Like you never see that.
So for anyone that didn't catch it, Logan had a buddy, the same buddy that's been thrown out before and it's been in ringside, jump over the barrier, pulled the Knuckles out, tried to give it to Logan. That guy gets tossed. Then Waller and Austin Theory pop out. They're the ones that give it to Logan, right? Somehow it goes from the friend to them to
Yeah.
Logan. Plans get screwed up. KO pounds on Logan. He gets the Knuckles, hits Logan. Gonna get the 1, 2, 3. Forgets to take him off his left hand. The ref counts to 2 and then points up like I caught that, and then disqualifies. And then KO puts Logan through a table, or through the
Yeah.
announcer booth.
Yep.
Which you thought may have been reinforced for the night because of prior.
Well, because early in the four-way, like they like choke slammed a guy
Yeah, and
and
it
like
didn't move. Yeah.
rock bottom a guy, and it just didn't even
Yeah.
it didn't even flex.
Yeah, so
Maybe they had a couple extra pins in it they removed before the Logan
they
match.
just pulled that release valve and
Yeah.
it just collapsed. But yeah, what's your thoughts on this? I thought it was good. I thought it was exactly what I thought it was going to be. I know I say I can't stand Logan as a person, but like he can perform.
You cannot.
He can keep up. Like
Yeah. Oh no. Well, yeah. Well. Thank you for finally coming to that realization. Because every time I used to say that, you used to go nuts.
I never
You,
said he wasn't a great athlete. I just think he's a piece of shit human.
I understand that, but every time I said he's got talent in the ring, you used to criticize me for saying that. So I'm glad you finally came around to saying.
If you go back to every episode we talked about him, I always say that he's a great athlete and he can do some things in the ring.
I will.
Dan, we
find
watched
the
him last
episode.
year jump from ringside to ringside and crossbody ricochet.
Yes.
Like, obviously, somebody with a 110 IQ would not make that
I
statement.
think I
Oh, here we go.
I likened him and Bad Bunny, and that's when you went like nuts on me about it. So
I don't know. I'm surprised we haven't seen him back because he said he signed up for like multi-show deal, I believe. So I'm
Yeah,
surprised
isn't
we
he,
haven't been back yet. Or
isn't
did
he on tour though?
that could be it? Or I couldn't remember because they last had him getting hurt. So I don't know if he really got hurt.
I think he's like on an international tour now.
But
oh
which-
no, he's in the United States
yeah.
right now.
But just to cheer Dan up a little, so he smiles and doesn't go and try and find the toaster after this episode. To throw in the bathtub.
Yes, I think people understand that.
Well, some of the generation don't. When I walk into work and I say, "Oh, this is my 13th reason why," somebody doesn't get that from not watching 13 Reasons Why. You know what I mean?
Which has been heavily edited.
Yeah, and it's when someone specific walks onto the floor. So
With a coffee.
yeah, so this is 2 hours late. I'm here. Yeah, no one cares. I did have a question that I forgot to ask you last night. At what point do you think they have Logan stop getting help from the friends? Like, I get it's part of his heel thing that he gets over because of that. But at some point, when you see this kid continue to be a great athlete, like, at what point did that become more detrimental to what he can do in the ring, rather than, like some guy from a YouTube podcast is all of a sudden jumping a barrier and getting help. Like, that's really not believable if KO's there, because KO will crush that guy.
Well, I suppose. I mean, you start to see that last night.
But he jumped though. Like,
like
he
because
helped out.
It didn't work. He helped out, but it didn't. Well, it indirectly.
Yeah.
It didn't directly help, right? Because KO stopped it and then just got caught, which was the issue. But I don't know that they stopped that for a while because, right, that's just like very typical heel crap, right? Like cheat to win, right? Like all that stuff.
That's the history of wrestling.
And he loves to do some Eddie Guerrero stuff all the time. So
he does, yeah.
He's always
the shake before the frog
splash. He's always doing the shimmy. Yeah, he's always doing the shimmy.
You think they put him with Grayson Waller in Austin sometime soon?
Yeah,
I think so too. They have some type of, and I think we get KO and Sammy back for that somehow.
Yeah, maybe.
You know what I mean? And then they just pick a third or something. But I would be okay with watching that. I think that could really perform. And at this point, I would say Logan's a better wrestler than Grayson Waller. Because I think I expect so much more out of Grayson based on his size, and I don't think we ever see it. The coolest thing he does is that spin, the tumble to the clothesline, or the tumble to the stunner, right?
Right. So
a guy, I get it. It's somewhat special that a guy that size can do the tumble through the ropes than Stunner, but like after a while, he hasn't added anything to his repertoire. We saw
Right.
Logan Paul put KO in what 2 or 3 submissions last night. So it's like,
Yeah.
you know that Logan is at least back in the lab trying to add stuff. Compared to Grayson, who basically just been mouthpiece, and that's pretty much it. Like, I don't know. It's weird to watch like different people like add stuff, and just how that small like adding of a certain set could like really just make you be more in favor of what they can do in the ring. And it's just a small thing. Like, it's just a small development, but I thought that was pretty interesting last night. Yeah, so anything else to add on this one with Logan and KO? Logan retains due to disqualification on KO, and then KO puts him through the booth, and looks like we're not done with this yet. So,
No, not at all.
anything else on this one? Or you want to get to the main event?
Let's get to it.
The 2024 Royal Rumble main event was next. What are your thoughts, Dan? Beginning, middle, end. The good, bad, the ugly. Go.
I mean, overall it was fine, but I guess that's the problem is it was just fine. You know, there weren't really any um big surprises. Like I don't
Yeah.
know. For me, Andrade's not a big surprise. Like it
Well,
just
and we
wasn't.
heard for how long he was going back to WWE the next day, right?
Right.
Like his contract was done with AEW on a Tuesday. They said the next day he was flying to WWE. So it's like you have to expect that, right? Like that was like I for sure you didn't see him on SmackDown or Raw or anything. He's gonna be there. He had to be there.
Right. Right.
So, yeah,
Um. Yeah, I mean, it was all right. Like the ending, I thought was good, and like you had some good spots, and um, but it was just good.
yeah,
It was just good.
it did what
You
it
know, I
was
don't think
supposed to,
there's
right?
anything like like when if we look at it like good, bad, ugly. I don't really know that there was much bad or ugly in it. It was just good, you
Yeah,
know.
it just did what it was
Um,
supposed to.
Braun Breaker, I guess, like had he had I mean he had a bunch of eliminations, right?
Yeah, and then he stood toe to toe with Omos. So,
Yeah. So he 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.
which is wild.
Um,
Like if you think we're gonna get Braun Breaker versus Omos.
yeah, I mean that's a little odd to me, a little weird, but like Omos is just like I don't know, like who do you pair with that guy?
You can't, right?
Um,
It's a freak show match. Like
right. But he had a lot of like explosive stuff go on, right? Like
he
Triple
does
H
have
made a
that.
point to say that and stuff. I don't know. Fightful was saying that like it seems like he was Brock's replacement.
So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's what I wanted to bring up to you. You think we'll ever get to see the list of alternates that they had backstage? Because supposedly they had a big list for both the women's and the men's, of like they had
I mean,
alternates ready to go.
Fightful had a list of a bunch of people that were there but weren't used. I assume, like, who talked about this? I think actually the New Day have talked about this on their podcast when they were doing it frequently when they were all there. That, like, I think Xavier Woods once, like, he missed out on being in a Royal Rumble because he, like, didn't show up because he wasn't booked. And then somebody went down with, like, a freak, like, muscle pull or something and they were like, "Oh, let's put Xavier in," and like he was nowhere to be found because he wasn't booked, so he didn't come to the venue or whatever. Or, like one of the three of them like had that story, I think. So like I assume there's just like a bunch of guys, right, that like were around that so Fightful was reporting that Blair Davenport, Johnny Gargano, Titus O'Neil, Xavier Woods, Julius Creed, Brutus Creed, Tozawa, Gable, Otis were all in backstage, but not used, obviously.
Good. I don't think there's.
So
Is there anybody that's exciting on there to you? Maybe the Creed brothers, because they're like a bunch of they're like Braun. They have athletic power. Like they hit you, it's loud. But other than that, like,
no,
yeah, same. Glad they were the alternates. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and so the alternates too. Again, like their purpose is just in case a guy happens to get injured or like they decide at the last second they don't want a guy to like, which would be weird. Like, what are you worried about? Like, nobody really loses anything getting eliminated from a Royal Rumble. You either have no change or you gain something, right? Like Braun Breaker gained something last night with his showing, and then he got eliminated, but that doesn't hurt anything, right? Half the guys that got eliminated, it doesn't even matter. Well, not half the guys, pretty much all the guys that got eliminated. It just doesn't matter that they got eliminated.
Right. Yeah. Well, and Uncle Dave said that or I'm sorry, Post Wrestling said that Brock was originally slated to work with Dominic in the Elimination Chamber. Brock Lesnar was originally slated to work with Dominic Mysterio at WWE Elimination Chamber. So maybe they have Dominic knock Brock out?
I guess, but like that's
weird one to me. Yes.
That's a weird matchup. Like
yes.
What are you doing with that? Like what are you getting there?
You're not getting anything besides Brock's back. And it's probably Brock versus the Judgment Day. So if there's any one guy that could take on all of the Judgment Day, it's Brock. You know what I mean? It's back to that freak attraction of.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Because
it's just weird. But anyway, it didn't happen, so it doesn't
Rumble was going to be Brock's return to television to set up his next run. So
right.
But that's weird. Yeah, I thought it did what it was supposed to. I think the problem. I don't think they did anything wrong. I think as fans, we went into it too overhyped.
Probably.
So yes, would I like to see some people brought in? Sure, but I don't know who you bring in. Like, I was thinking about this. I don't know who else you would bring in. Okada? But then you bring in Okada, and then you're starting him off at NXT anyways? What good does that do? You know what I mean?
Well, other than the surprise element, it doesn't do anything.
Exactly. So,
but you do that every once in a while just for the hell of it, right? Big surprise or a nice feel good legend return, right?
Yeah.
None of that happened last night, so.
No. When did Damian Priest come in? He came in 26. He had 10 minutes and he got knocked out by Sami Zayn.
Yeah.
So you think we're gonna get the Judgment Day goes back after Sami now? Again?
Maybe. I don't know. I suppose you could, but
Finn came in 14th, got knocked out. He took out Carmelo, got knocked out by Braun. I wouldn't mind seeing Finn and Carmelo go.
Yeah.
I know you really don't watch NXT, and I always been raving to you about Carmelo, but I think last night was a perfect example of Carmelo can make anybody look good just based on how he is in the ring and how athletic he is.
He's so smooth with his moves.
Too. Yeah, there's no hitch, there's no nothing. He doesn't slip up, he doesn't screw up. He's not off timing. He's always where he's supposed to be. And if he's slightly off, he finds a crazy way to make up for it. I don't know if he'll ever get a shot at the world title just because he's the size of him, but I would love to see it one day. I would love to see what he can do. I mean, going from this, who do you, in case we didn't say it, Cody took out Shinsuke, Gunther, or Gunther and CM Punk winner.
In theory.
And Theory. Yeah, sorry,
Yep.
and Theory. How would you plan the chamber from here? You're GM for the next pay per view.
I assume the chamber like is going to be for Seth's title, so
Yeah.
it's probably going to have Punk, Gunther, McIntyre, right? McIntyre got eliminated by Punk.
Yeah.
So Punk,
yeah.
Gunther, McIntyre.
I think you got to throw Sammy back in there because he got knocked out by Drew.
Yeah.
And I
maybe.
think we see Damien in there. What do you feel about Damien in there?
I mean, maybe, but I don't know, like, because I just don't know what they're doing with the briefcase, right? So
That's
like,
a big part
they've
of
it. They've got to figure that out too. You know what they're doing with that, and then are they going to do a cashes it right after a title change or during a match, like make it a triple threat, right? They've already they've done a lot with the briefcase over the years, so there's not a lot of new stuff to do, but um yeah, so maybe Damien, I could see that. I could see that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's just big on Seth's health, right? Like that's the big thing going into the chamber. Because then you got to find a way to fill his spot if he's not in the chamber.
Yeah.
So it's like, but Seth did say he will be ready to go at Mania. So that's,
Hopefully.
well, from the prognosis and everything, that's what it seemed like. Because it wasn't an ACL tear, right? It was an MCL tear. Yeah, grade 2 MCL tear and partially torn meniscus. So they don't have to do surgery on the meniscus if it doesn't swell. But yeah, it's interesting because this is, I don't know, man. This is big. This is like this could determine how this card actually looks and feels to everybody when it happens. Like it's, yeah, and he said like at least 4 times on this Wrestling Inc. article that the ACL is completely intact and there's no issues with that. So that's huge because that could have been a hell of a lot worse for them. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think if I was GM, I think we would have the same thing. I would go Drew. I would go Sammy. Punk. How many is there? 5 or 6?
There's 6, I think, in the chamber.
So Sammy, Drew. This is tougher than I thought.
Maybe they'll throw in Jey Uso. He was number 1.
Yeah.
He technically had the most time in the match of anyone before getting eliminated, and was eliminated by Gunther.
Yep. Based on Carmelo showing, do you throw him in, or do you think he needs to prove more?
I don't think you throw him in that yet. I mean, I suppose you could, but I don't think you throw him in that yet.
Right. Yeah, this is tough, man. Sammy, Drew, Punk, Finn. I don't know. Jay, like you said, that's 5. Yeah, and it all depends if Seth can go or not. Like that's what it is. Like,
yeah,
it's tough. The only thing I wanted to see occur in this Rumble, now that I think back to it afterwards, I would like to see Pat back if he take a chokeslam for Omos just so he could talk about how it felt on his show. I would wait for that. That's all. That's all I wanted to see. But overall, it did what it was supposed to. I feel like I said before, Dan disagree or not, but I think it was more an issue with us being so hyped rather than WWE doing anything wrong. And I think it was solid. I'll give it a B plus. I think it did what it was supposed to. Punk got in his sarcastic lines that like kind of helped the energy of it towards the end. Went from Cody and Gunther to Cody and Punk, right? Because Gunther was the third one, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you throw Gunther in the chamber then if Seth doesn't go. There you go. And Punk with the I didn't wait 10 years to get beat by Dusty's son.
Yep.
But then did you see the tweet that came out? Like a lot of places were running with this last night. It had Punk sitting at the bottom of the booth staring up. And remember, I believe Punk told Cody one of his promises he made to Dusty was like he would always keep an eye on his son. So it was kind of like an homage back to the fact that Punk is now like, you know, I won't say like handed the torch, but like, you know what I mean? Like it fits for this part of the show. But that was pretty cool. So yeah, solid B. Dan, you agree with the grade or you think should be else? All right. Now,
I agree with that grade.
Let's get to the point that you were waiting all day to complain about. Let's get your Law and Order
complain.
SVU
There's
out.
nothing to complain about. Nothing to complain about. We just have differing opinions, and sometimes you just need to accept that.
Yeah, that you're wrong. Sure, Dan. I know.
I'm not wrong, and I'll tell you why I'm not
wrong.
wrong.
Hey, calm down now. Calm down. Side note, for the Saturday, January 27th show, AEW Collision, estimated tickets distributed before we hop into the post-conference for WWE, 2134.
Okay.
So
good for them.
I guess distributed means they probably dropped them off to the guys at the 7-Eleven and everything around the corner, but and they had a cage match, so that's cool.
Yeah.
But
they also have Dax shilling on Twitter today about everybody should go back and watch it if they haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. Dax should be just lucky his tag team partner hasn't shot him yet. So this is obvious. I know last episode I said I really didn't want to talk about the Vince McMahon stuff just because I think he's a piece of crap now, and it's even worse than we thought, which kind of sucks. It sucks for the female that's involved. It sucks as we talked about it last night while watching the show that there is a female that came forward with allegations in the past, and then she unfortunately couldn't deal with it and took her life. So it shows, that it's likely all this stuff has been true along, and Vince has just unfortunately been able to escape free because of the money, power, and respect he has, which kind of kills wrestling for me because, I don't know, it just takes Vince legacy down in the dumps. But Vince is gonna get what he deserves. I thoroughly believe in karma, and whatever he gets, he's gonna really deserve it. So, not to spend too much time on that, but there's gonna be some tie-in with Vince. So please don't kill me when I said I never want to talk about Vince again. But press conference. The questions. It went Bayley, Cody, Hunter, correct? If I remember correctly. Bayley, Cody, Hunter. Any thoughts you want to talk about first on Bayley?
I mean, no specific thoughts. I know you have something, so I won't steal your thunder on that. I thought it was just, she seemed happy to win, right? And she, these press conferences are funny because some people do them in character and some don't, right? Like, And I don't know that they're obviously not given direction on that, but they decide what they want to do. She certainly doesn't do hers with any sort of character.
No.
And last night kind of said, like, my character is just me now, or really has always been me, and I've just changed over time. So,
Which is cool.
I like it when they're not in character because, like, right, like, we're old enough to understand like how this works, so it's, for me, it's kind of cool to see their perspective. No different than any other athlete talking about a performance, a game, whatever you want to call it, or an actor, talking
Yeah.
about a movie or a
Yeah.
TV show
Very true.
and a
Good
character
point.
they played in you see these interviews of actors that played characters for 7 seasons of a really big TV show, and it's kind of interesting to hear their perspective on what it was like to be Tony Soprano, right, or Walter White, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's really cool sometimes. So I think it's the same in wrestling. I'd rather they all leave their character at the apron, or not the apron, at the curtain, right? Um, but I guess there are young fans out there that still like to see the character all the time. So
Well,
um,
and I think we talked about this before, or at least you and I have when we've been watching the pay-per-views. The best characters are the people that give their full selves to the characters, right?
mhm.
Like Stone Cold, Rock. Like Rock said at least over a dozen times, he had to learn to be the people. He had to learn to be the person that everybody hated at one point. And he said,
Yeah.
growing up playing football, being the jock, it was kind of like he was just able to be himself. He's not an asshole, but if you're gonna treat him like an asshole, he's gonna be an asshole. So that's Stone Cold. Stone Cold's best promo was after he got fired and he worked with Paul Heyman. When Paul
Hmm.
just turned the camera on and said go. When he got fired from WCW, right? Yeah, that's when he was stunning Steve and he got fired and he just went.
Yeah.
Stone Cold's famous line, the 316 line. That's just off top of his head. That's just something he did. So yeah, I agree with you. I prefer the post press conferences when um, they can do both because I think that's what makes the characters so much likable for us now. Like, yeah, we could tell the difference, like you said, but I just feel like there's much more of a connection. Um,
I
one thing,
and I suppose there are a couple of exceptions to that, but not many. Like, and
no,
the only one I can think of is MJF. Like, his post conference or his
yeah,
post match conference stuffs in character just further made his character that much better.
yeah,
Because his character was very real as well, right? So, um, and plus he lives it out everywhere, like autograph
yeah.
signings and photos on the street. I just saw a video clip of him the other day coming out of, or not, is, I don't know if when it was from, but I just saw it the other day, coming out of the gym and like stopping to take a picture with like these like 9-year-olds,
And
and
he's
he's
like,
giving them the finger as the parent takes the picture. And I just love it, right? Like, and then he takes the kid's sign and he rips it in half, like, it's great. But anyway, so go on with what you were gonna say.
no, she talked about how after her first month, she wanted to quit. She went to Dusty and basically told Dusty she quit, and Dusty was the only reason that she stayed along because Dusty said he saw what she has. He just they needed to pull it out of her. Um, so something like that I think is huge, right? Because then it just adds more to Dusty's legacy and something else for Cody to talk about when he hits the post press conference. Like it that just helps amplify everything that Cody talks about that Dusty and it's 100% believable because we read this how many times, right? Like we read this over and over
Right.
about Dusty. Um, I just found it a little bit weird that it seemed like she was surprised people were cheering for her. Um,
Yeah. I
I just found, but that might be like that. So since she's herself, like that just might have been a self confidence thing. She's just might been having a little bit now with that stable. Like the fact that she doesn't have a title, like she's just kind of been the glue, right, for the WWE female superstars for a while now. She's just been consistent. She's been the glue that kept everything together. So that could have like added to like her personal anxiety or her personal self-esteem issue of like what's going on and how she felt. But then again, it's another reason I think I've told you this before on our car rides to go get video games and everything. Like I think when we look back on Bailey, I think you're gonna put Bailey near the top of the Mount Rushmore of female wrestlers.
Yeah.
Just
No,
because
I don't
how
disagree with you.
consistent she is. Just how consistent she is, even through injuries. She's ran that stable a couple times with her leg in a brace, like so
Right.
she could still work outside the ring as well. So, hopefully she's not dealing with too much pressure. But I'm glad she won, and it was just good to hear from her because I don't think we get to hear from her enough. So that's all I got on Bailey.
Yeah.
So feel free to
I,
step
I
in.
mean, I think one of the things too that is important context to her answer, and maybe part of the reason she answered the way she did, is the question was basically like asking her like, you know, basically she made like a babyface turn the way the crowd reacted, right? And I think the question was kind of phrased like, was that intended? Like, or like,
Yeah,
was this a point where you're gonna do it? Like, you've been a heel for a long time, and we haven't seen a babyface since the hugger, right? And that's true, right? She hasn't been a babyface since she was, since the day she came out
the
and
blow
slashed
ups and
all
everything.
the
Yep.
Bailey buddies. Yeah. So, I thought her answer, was partly because she was trying to say, like, right, and I brought it up so I didn't like butcher what she said. Like, she started by saying, like, she doesn't tell the crowd what to do, right? Like, so this is just me. Like, I'm just being me. And then, yeah, she got into some of the history of it to be like a little bit of like, yeah, like I didn't think I was gonna be me at all because and Dusty was the one who pulled it out. But like honestly, like what I'm doing out there is just being me. And if they like it, they like it, and if they hate it, they hate it, and it just is what it is. And so like she made it seem like she really was the hugger at one time, but now
Mhm.
she's I guess matured. It might be the way it was because
Mhm.
the hugger wasn't a mature gimmick. It was
No.
very loved.
Yeah.
It just wasn't a mature gimmick, and she's a much more, to your point, serious wrestler and among the top. And I think you're right, she will finish among the top in women's wrestling when she finally hangs
Yep.
it up someday. And I don't know that that day is necessarily any day soon
No, I
either,
don't think
right? Like
she has a ton of tread left. I think she's
right.
barring any
um
crazy injuries.
I don't even
Yes.
know how old she is.
Uh,
I'm 34. She's only 34.
yeah.
In wrestling that's nothing anymore.
Yeah.
So I guess I think like the context of the question was a little bit, and then she just got pretty deep into it. But that might be, it's been a long road since she was like in a championship picture, right? It's been a while
Yeah,
since
because
she
she's
was in
been
a
the glue,
championship
right?
picture,
Because she's been the
right?
glue.
And now she's back in the picture, and I think it's well deserved, obviously.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah, I don't think
And
anybody questions that. And if they do,
no,
they really don't know wrestling by any beans at all.
right.
So.
And to Triple H's point about her, like the consistency, the solid, is one thing. And then also like she obviously is professional enough to know sometimes you just ride out that plateau. And then next thing you know, boom, you're in the championship picture.
Mm-hmm.
And you do that by being that consistent glue that you can do anything the company needs you to do. So,
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, good for Bailey. Hopefully she starts getting the respect that we both agree that she deserves. I know it's kind of tricky with the internet wrestling committee because how they feel about female wrestlers, but whatever. If you have any brain, she deserves all the respect in the world. She's gonna go down as one of the greatest. She'll be on the Mount Rushmore of wrestlers from now to the future and the past. There's no doubt about it. And especially if she gets a title win against Io and or Rhea, she's she's already certified Hall of Famer without a doubt. That's not a question. But now let's go see if she can get on a roll here. If she can start collecting belts, I would be 110% behind that. So that would be cool. Following Bailey, we went to Cody.
Mhm.
Once again, Cody had an issue with his sinuses and he was crying. Seems to be a normal post press conference
Well,
thing, I guess.
you know, when you started out with Diamond Dallas Page asking the first question about his father,
Yeah,
you knew that was going to happen.
yeah. Well, and he brought the real like alpha type move when he came out and said, "I know there's been some things said about me, but I'm here. I'm the guy for this company. I'm gonna be the guy in the future for this company." It's like, okay, well, if you're the guy, you really don't have to announce it. Like that's how I feel. But I texted you about that and thought that to be kind of weird. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, the funny part for me is like I don't even know what memes or gifs he's talking, gifs, whatever they're. I don't even know what he's talking about, to be
yeah,
honest. So
which
if you know what they are, um, I thought it was odd too, but I also had no idea what the context was. And when he name dropped like Sean Ross Sapp about sending him the memes, I was just like, it was a little weird because it almost felt like, is he going after like guys like Punk did in AEW? Like, like Brawl Out started with Punk basically like lecturing the quote unquote wrestling journalists in the room.
so here it is. I think this is one of them.
Okay, let's see.
It's a Tanya Harding meme when Rock came back. Sean Ross told them to pull up.
Oh,
This is supposedly
okay,
one of them.
okay.
So it seems to be what it seems like. A lot of these have been like that when people have stepped in front of Cody to, you know.
Oh, this is the meme I sent Cody Rhodes after The Rock showed up. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So like, I guess I understand it a little bit more, but I still agree it's weird. I
Yeah,
thought it was weird when you said it, and I thought it was weirder. It was now I think it's even weirder. Or now I understand it more, but I still think it's weird. I
yeah,
don't think
I
it's
agree.
weirder. I like because
Yeah,
that's not him,
no,
right? Like, so obviously it was bothering him.
right. He's the
Um,
company guy, right? Like yeah, he don't agree, but he's gonna go out there put on show. I mean, Jesus Christ, he was Stardust. You know
yeah,
what I mean? He
and
even talks about it how Stardust had no fans, but he still had to beat Stardust.
right. And dashing Cody
Yeah,
Rhodes only
and
had a
Dash
few
and Cody Rhodes with the stash. Like,
had a
yeah.
few fans.
So like, this is the guy that like knows he can get a 40 grand raise at any external company, but still decides to stay. Right? Like that's what this is breaking down to at this point. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so yeah, it started off a little bit weird. They definitely know how to throw certain questions at Cody. Cody definitely knows how to react personally to really put everything he has behind these questions, which is fine. That's who Cody has always been, right? Like Cody's not one to change who he's been based on questions. Like the Cody that you see is the Cody that you get in and out of wrestling. So I didn't think it was bad. Cody did address the Vince McMahon situation. Um,
Well, he was asked,
yeah,
right?
and
Like,
then
I'm actually surprised nobody asked Bailey.
as a female, I thought for sure she was gonna get grilled right
I
away.
thought it. I mean, I assumed it to be the first question for each person, and from what I had read online, like well, John Alba said it that WWE does not screen questions
No,
ahead of these press
yeah,
conferences, so they don't know other than you could tell during Triple H's that Byron Saxton was looking for people he didn't think would ask about it. But I'm surprised nobody asked Bailey. But anyway, yes, somebody asked Nick Hausman asked Cody. First
Yeah.
question, right off the bat.
As far as the news is concerned, we're finding out and reading the same things that you guys were reading, as said by Cody. You said a dark cloud, certainly. As far as TKO and Dick Khan and the board clearly took it seriously, acted immediately, looking at the future. I don't know the answer to that, and I think somewhere is really probably basic tenet of this crew more than ever, but from a roster standpoint, it's very family. Never seen anything like this. Most of the time, wrestling locker rooms are fighting, talking trash about each other, making fun of each other, sandbagging each other in the ring, and all that nonsense. The crew is very team based. Perhaps that's the ingredient. Everyone's looking out for everyone, being accountable. For me, as a performer, I've been through the dark periods on our industry. It might sound cheesy, but it's very reinforcing if you're in my position that it's a time when, hey, we have 50,000 people out there. I want to give them something else from the weekend that isn't a terrible situation, terrible news. I think we were able to do that. Obviously, as more news comes out, we'll be seeing it like you do. End quote. I guess this is kind of how I've been explaining my point of view to you, right? Like, I mean, so we can just jump to the Hunter thing, if you want.
Yeah, let's just get into, because Cody had an answer, and then he had whatever, and then they get to Hunter, and he's
So-
asked a couple of different ways.
Yeah.
Um,
Before we get into the negative, because that's the stuff you live by, what did you think about the shot that Hunter took?
the Forbidden Door shot.
Yeah.
Shot.
Yeah.
I thought it was
I love
hilarious.
it.
I thought it was funny.
Love it. Let it fly. Let it fly. Because he knows, like, one of these shots is going to get Tony to go crazy again on Twitter. So he's like, let me just let it fly and see where we go from there. Yeah, I love it. It makes it great, right? Like, it just makes it, like, that's why everybody loves an MJF press conference. Because he does the
Yes.
same thing. To, like, a different intensity, but he does it, right? So it's like, yeah, so...
No, I thought it was great, right? I thought it was great, because like he said, it's not a forbidden door. These are partnerships and opportunities, which has always been.
Yeah, and which is the way it should be, right?
Right. It hasn't been a forbidden door technically ever, but the closest to a forbidden door was the Nitro Kevin Nash Scott Hall deal. And and then also the Radicals going to WWE, right? And the ECW stuff, the early ECW stuff, right? With Perry Saturn and Chris Benoit and all them. Remember, they did that. WWE knew, but they didn't tell the guys. And then like a fight ensued sort of by accident.
Yeah. So to get
that's as close as you ever get to that.
Yeah. So but I love it. So Hunter, if for some reason you get that bored that you tune into our podcast, please keep doing it. That'd be great. But to go on with the stuff I really don't want to talk about because it involves the POS that is Vince McMahon. One of the first questions that he was asked about Vince came from a Western New York grade of Wrestle Economics, Brendan Thurston. WrestleNomics, sorry. If Hunter had read the lawsuit, Hunter's response, quote, I think Cody mentioned it that we all found out real time when you were, and that's the truth, end quote. So he kind of stops to the side of it.
The second question, though, right?
What one?
About it?
That was the second question? Yeah,
that was the
John
that
Alba.
was the second question.
John Alba was the first one, I think, right?
I think he got asked 3 different ways, right? Like he got asked about it, and he begged off. He got asked by Brandon if he read the lawsuit, and he had that answer you just read. And then John Alba.
John Alba
right,
was before
Alba
Brandon.
asked,
yeah.
Oh, was he before?
Yeah, John.
Well, maybe he did only get asked twice, but
yeah.
I thought he asked. I thought he got asked 3 times.
So for Hunter's response to John, basically, just to take the quick version of this, he asked Hunter what he might have known about the events detailed in the lawsuit during the time he was trying to vote McMahon out of power, and how the allegations might affect WWE's relationship with partners moving forward, which was a relevant question, since Slim Jim briefly pulled the sponsorship of the Royal Rumble and then returned after Vince was sent packing. Which is telling that he puts in there when you were trying to vote Vince out of power.
Not even trying. When you were voting to not let him return.
No, but
and then eventually he did return. That's how he phrased it.
Yeah.
Because how it happened, right? Originally they voted no, and then Vince exerted the power and basically said that I'm tanking any future deal with my ownership power, and then they had to let him back in. Then he got rid of the people that, well, most of the people that wouldn't vote him back in.
So this is on WrestleNomics Twitter from 2 hours earlier. It says Vince McMahon no longer holds preferred class voting power, which ended when WWE was merged into TKO, making it unlikely he'll be able to return to the company this time. From today's sides of WrestleNomics Radio, he has Vince McMahon's rating power then at 81% when he forced his return to WWE in January 2023. Now 12% with TKO. And that was published 2 hours earlier.
Yeah, right. Because remember, he basically held the board hostage.
Yes.
Because he said, I'm going to tank any potential sale unless I'm back on the board.
Yes.
And they brought him back specifically to do the sale. And then the board members changed. Stephanie resigned, right? He got rid of those other couple of higher ups that, what's his... George something, I think, and the female, I can't think of her name now, that was on the board, the business people.
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? Like it's a... So, and then Hunter's response to John Alba of Fightful was, I'm going to do exactly what you expect me to do. Quote, look, we just had an amazing week, and I just said a 10-year, $5 billion Netflix deal. Rock joining our board. We just sold out the Royal Rumble, put in 48,000 people into Tropicana Field. I choose to focus on the positives. So for me, it was just a different version of the answer that we got from Cody. I'm guessing they were directed to do it this way. If they weren't directed doing it this way, I think they were... If it was anybody else than Hunter and Cody, I don't know if the pure, genuine, like, they're just trying to protect the show and what they just did. Going into the Rumble, if you go back to episode 16, is this 17? Whatever it is. Our prior episode, going back into the Rumble, I brought up the point that I was concerned what the Vince, dudes would do to the Rumble. And it basically... It's pretty much what happened in the press conference, right? Like, this is what I was afraid of just, like, this taking away from what they just accomplished with the Rumble, taking away from the storylines. But you knew it was going to get asked in some sort of form. I just don't know if they thought it was going to get asked as frequently as they did. Obviously, they should have thought about it, but...
Yeah, I mean, I think if they didn't think it would be asked the way it was asked, then they were woefully unprepared.
Yeah.
And for a company that big that's been through scandals, and not only that, but has the backing of this major corporate group now with Endeavor and the TKO thing, like, how you don't have somebody that basically forms an answer for you. And there's a couple of ways I think you can go, but what I didn't like about it, I liked Cody's answer. I didn't like Triple H's like tiptoeing, because Cody was just like, oh, you said it was a dark cloud. It certainly was. And TKO and Nick Khan stepped in and took action, which was a little weird because we don't know for sure what that is, because TKO actually has been silent. And I went back and checked. The only statement they've made was the one from a couple of days ago, which said we're reviewing internally. They've made no statements about Vince McMahon resigning. They've got, other than just removing him from their website and stuff, there's they've been declining to comment for different news sources that reached out. The only thing we have is Vince McMahon's attorney the leaked email, which I'm sure was strategic, but the leaked email from Nick Khan to Talent, Vince McMahon's attorney saying, we still deny all this, but out of respect for the company and the universe, he's resigning. And then you have Slim Jim who said, we're back in now after discussions and Vince's departure. That's all we have.
Yeah.
So I just feel like whether you want to go down a listen, that is a legal matter. I'm not going to comment on it. That's the end of it. I want to focus on the positive. I do like that part of his answer. I want to focus on the positive. The problem I had with it is like he kept trying to go back to we had an amazing week. That's true, but you also had the worst thing in your history now happen, which is like this unbelievable set of allegations that just is like the worst thing you could have happen from the guy who created this essentially, right? Like to what it is today. And it looks a little funny, right? Like, regardless of the relationship, you knew he was close with McMahon. He's always said how close he is. It's his father-in-law right off the bat. And even if he doesn't have a relationship with Stephanie anymore, you were still working with him while Stephanie wasn't probably even speaking to him anymore, right? Like, um, so it looks a little weird because you're dancing around it instead of just saying, look, we take it serious. Internally we're doing things, I'm not going to comment on specifics, but internally it's being handled. you know you could rely on what TKO had said, which was it's being reviewed internally, and I'm not going to comment further on it. It's a legal action, and now I want to focus on everything great that's been going on. And then you go into The Rock, Netflix, the Royal Rumble, Cody, Bailey, like all that stuff. The problem I think is you breathe a little bit of life into it by not addressing it quickly and right off the bat, because then people kept pushing them. And what happens is then you get John Alba telling him, well, you voted to block him and he got back anyway. Like, what do you think about that now that it's come out in detail, the reasons that you guys were kind of blocking him in the first place? So it just, I don't know. And to keep saying you had an amazing week, yeah, you had an amazing week marred by this. And for me, I think it better if you just say, look, I'm not going to comment further after this. Obviously, it's serious. We take it serious. Internally, there'll be a lot of review, and that's all I can say about it. And
Yeah.
then you could defer to TKO maybe, or to Nick, or whoever, right? Like, so I'm a little surprised they didn't tell him this is what you should say, like, because it seemed like to me, because I've never seen him, I won't say he was rattled, but he certainly was struggling with what he wanted to say, right? I think it seemed that way to me. And that made me think like nobody said to him, hey, if this comes up, which it probably will, here's some things you might want to say, right? Like, they might have just said, well, cross our fingers and we'll see what happens.
Well, yeah, I didn't think it was rattled. I just think it was tough questioning. Um, and maybe if anything, they should have been um more prepared for the continuations of questions. Just to hit your point on it. Um, but I mean, this is kind of like a perception thing, right? Like people are gonna view it their own way. If he should have said more, or if he should have said something different, or he took care of everything. Um, I'm happy with the fact that he said he's focusing on the now. Um, I do agree that you got a clean house. Well, basically, before we get to that point of it, there was a third question too. It looks like, in some aspect that touched on this, Cameron Hawkins of the Ringer, um, was asked, "What is he doing basically to protect people from this ever happening again?" And he gives, "I can give you the most generalized answer that I can. Everything possible." He said to Cameron
Yeah.
Hawkins at Ringer. That is very important thing to us and a very important topic to us. It's as simple as everything possible. End quote. So I mean, yeah, it's tough, right? Like it's like I feel like if I feel like they were doomed to fail no matter what with these questions, because if they did say what you wanted them to say with this, I feel like people would have already been moving the goalposts and saying, "Well, that's not enough." So them
Well, you'll never make anybody happy, but
No,
I
but that's
just
why I think they probably thought they had the best intentions going about this way, and it could have been just slightly edited, and it would have been a little bit better. That's why, like, I think they were just doomed to fail on these types of questions, no matter what. But I'm not surprised.
I also think it's tough though that Cody answered it directly and then Triple H didn't, which I'm not right. Like that's not Triple
Yeah,
H's fault, but right, like so and I think I said this to you earlier. Your wrestler answered, and then you, who are the top guy, right in the day to day of this company, didn't answer it. Like that's a little tough for him too. And like he could have just followed Cody's lead to say, yes, it's a very dark cloud, and we're and he could have just copied what Cody said,
yeah,
and he didn't. You know
yeah,
that it just makes it weirder that one guy would answer it but another wouldn't. And in fairness to anyone who's listening to this, we've never talked about it, but I feel the same way about Tony Khan not addressing the Chris Jericho stuff and not addressing some other like stuff going on,
yeah,
at his press conferences. And he's done a little bit of this dance around it too, except for the CM Punk thing where he just kept saying it's illegal. Legally, I can't speak
yeah.
about it.
Well,
Like,
and so that was kind of what my next statement was. If anything, it's a little disheartening to see TKO not put some leadership out at the press conference to sit with Hunter to field these questions. Because then again, this was the same company that really never made a statement when their CEO or president of UFC was smacking his wife in the bar and was caught on camera.
yeah.
So it's like TKO from a leadership perspective, they're 0 for 2, I guess I would say.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, to even further your point, what they should have done is Vince made his statement through his attorney about resigning. They should have followed it up with their own statement. And then every wrestler who was asked, or Triple H, or whomever was going to be asked that question, could refer to that statement that TKO put out and say, TKO issued a statement. Like, that's all that needs to be said about this. And we're going to focus on what we're doing. Right and I so that actually that like you just put it perfectly. Like that's a failure of TKO's leadership
Yep.
and Endeavor's leadership
Yeah.
to not protect Triple H, protect Cody and Bailey potentially. Like she, didn't get asked, but
No.
because all they had to do was release a statement, and it could almost mimic what Vince has said in a way, right? Like we reviewed this, Vince tendered his resignation. We take this very seriously, but we are moving forward. From here today. And whatever you want to say. Like I'm sure they have press people that make millions of dollars that can do this, right? Like, so that's the best way to put it. It's a failure on TKO's leadership to
Yeah, for
not
sure. For sure.
get out ahead of it.
Well, for sure. And if like your whole thing is to protect what you're building now, why do you not have somebody from TKO sitting with them? Why do you not have The Rock there sit with them for the board?
Right.
You
Or
could
even
use
Nick
The Rock.
Khan.
Well,
I,
The Rock and or Khan. You could use basically their notability to be handling this. I don't know if you saw the story, but when the news came out that Vince was gone, Dick Khan was walking around the WWE pop up store signing autographs and shaking hands for all the fans,
yeah.
supposedly. So just put that effort into this. If anything, I think it's more of TKO failed to show leadership for those such as Cody and Hunter. I'm glad it didn't get brought up from Bailey, not because I wanted to stop being talked about, but just to answer that as a female about the boss you just worked for. The level of anxiety or stress from that question that probably would have caused her would just been outrageous, and I just don't think that would have been fair to her.
Well, and
Especially
it's one
when
of these.
yeah,
Go ahead.
no,
No, go ahead.
and then especially when we've just seen no leadership from TKO at all, like no comment, no stance, and I would have came out and said we gave Vince the option to step away or resign, or he was going to be fired. I would have put it on him of like, because how many times are you going to give Vince the fact that he walked away? Just come out and say it what it was. We told Vince he is no longer allowed with this company. We we're thankful for what he's been able to build in the past, but due to external events that have occurred, I think it's time for Vince to take a long, hard look at what he's done in life, and then we're just focused on who we have around us and making this the best promotion that we can have, and we're on
Yeah.
the road to WrestleMania from here. Like that's all that had to
Yeah.
be said. That's all that had to be said. Because after a while, like this, letting them let Vince saying he's able to resign or he's able to walk away, it kind of feels like they're just letting him go off into hiding and nobody cares. Like put the grill to him. How many more of these stories do we need to come out? And God forbid if Ryback of all people now is right saying this is just the start of it. Like
Yeah. Well,
like he deserves the Chris Benoit treatment. He
I
deserves
think
to be
the
off everything.
yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about that actually earlier. I don't know how they're going to do that because you basically have to, if you do that, you have to erase like 8 years of their content, right? Or longer. No, 5 years of their 6 years maybe or longer. Yeah, no, longer than that of their content because he was in how many storylines and
Or they
like
can put that that counterclaim thing that they put up prior to like showing like a story based on like a true event or something. Like there's a generic like yeah, it sucks, but
it's tough. It's
yeah.
tough. I mean, I think the other thing that's tough for any of these people is, there are plenty of these wrestlers who probably didn't really know anything or to
No.
a degree maybe understood that like yeah, he's a womanizer or he's this, but I'm sure not many people knew to the degree this whole scandal goes. And then having to, like, these are people that thought so differently of him, right? Like because they didn't legitimately know this, right? There's so many people out there that have up including maybe even a week ago have been asked about him and have just like showered with love and respect, and now it's like all that is
Oh yeah.
gone,
Yeah.
rightfully so.
Yeah.
But then it's tough for them to have these answers because I'm sure, we're using Bailey as the example. I'm sure there's interviews out there where Bailey is talking about how much Vince McMahon had done for her, at a time when he was running it and like, you know, whatever. But oh, it's just crazy. So, um, yeah, the erasing him from their history is going to be hard though.
Yeah.
Much harder than Chris Benoit.
Yes, agreed. But um
It's just really bad too, like all the different like video clips from the old storylines that are coming out too, and it's just like, oh boy.
yeah. Yeah, it's bad, right? Like and especially I have the whole court document up or um the case file up right now and it's just page you can't even get through page 2 without like cringing from it. Um it's that bad. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, I felt like they were doomed anyways, but I thought they gave it not a valid attempt, but I thought like they tried to do the best they could with it and I just feel like to me personally, I felt like people would have kept moving the goalpost on them if they tried to do it any other way. But it's just something they're gonna have to battle now, right? Because it's not like this is going away anytime soon. Like this is just getting started.
No, probably not, but usually the best way to do that is to just come out and address it, and
Yeah,
then you
and I
can at
think
least
that's probably going to be the feedback they take from this, right?
right. And then like like you said, TKO needs to come out and there needs to be a definitive statement. You know, obviously, like they said something to Slim Jim that got Slim Jim to come back. So like, work with that. Like, what did you say to them? That made them happy enough. Because Slim Jim made a point to say it wasn't just McMahon's departure. It was and discussions with TKO's leadership. So there needs to be a statement, and then after that, WWE employees can just refer to that statement, and then eventually people will stop asking because they know they're going to get the same answer every time,
Yeah.
Um,
Well, just to let you know, you're in good company as Dave Meltzer is still continue to ring Triple H through the ringer on this. No pun intended. But
I think a few people did. I think Sean Ross Sapp did too, from what I thought I saw a tweet about it. Like I thought a bunch of people kind of said like this just isn't great. Like you just got to come out and give an answer, you know.
yeah, yeah, you just got to handle it. So is what you wanted, but it is what it is. Should be interesting going forward, and not interesting with the fact of what's going on, but interesting with the fact of their plan to just protect everybody involved. That's kind of something I want to hear more about, is what they're doing internally. I think if they talk about that once they address it as well, I think that helps kind of enclose what they're doing to handle this, that they're not dealing with it right now. But when it comes time for them for different people to do with it, then they will. But I feel like, you know,
Yeah.
so should be interesting. Yeah, so that was the Royal Rumble card. I mean, was there anything else you wanted to talk about on that Spot Fest indie programming that you like, or?
I haven't even watched it in weeks,
And I
months
haven't even
maybe.
watched it since we're in Hawaii.
I I don't even remember watching it there, but
Oh
yeah,
no, that
I
was
was gonna say
SmackDown.
maybe it's been months since I've watched it now. Um, yeah.
Real quick, you think Edge is kind of like shooting himself in the foot, probably for asking for too much.
No, no. Who was I listening to today? I was listening to a podcast today, and actually, maybe it was Eric. Actually, I think it was Eric Bischoff, but it was like a week or two ago, his podcast, and they talked about that a little bit with people going to AEW, and he talked about Edge and Bryan Danielson, specifically, and saying like, look, there's a lot of different motivations for why you would or wouldn't join a company, and some of those motivations might just be to do something different than, and Eric's big on different than, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
um and it's probably not money necessarily. It's maybe a little bit more freedom and a lesser schedule, and whatever. So I don't know that a guy like Edge or Danielson went over there with this idea of like they cared about becoming a true competition to WWE, um, as much as like guys like obviously FTR with the way they've been acting, or some other people who come over that had real issues with WWE and want to see bad things happen so that AEW can become bigger. So I don't know that Edge is kicking himself as much as he's probably. It's just maybe it's not what he thought it would be, but also if Eric's right, he didn't go there because he thought it was going to be 1,000 times better. He went there because it gave him a different opportunity and probably more freedom and a relaxing schedule in comparison.
Yeah, I could see that. That's a valid point. I don't know. To me, I just feel bad that he's not here for this, because I feel like that's just somebody else that they could throw in to help just to go. Um, but it is what it
But
is.
he had his opportunity, right? He said it himself. He had a contract from them,
But
and he
it's just
just
not what he
decided.
wanted. Yeah.
Yeah, so you know, for a guy like I think for a guy like Edge too, it is about just doing like what you want to do now because he doesn't have to do it at all anymore.
No, he kind of.
You know,
Yeah.
and he got to go out of WWE the way he wanted. He got his final run there. He came back from his injury. He didn't get a championship, but that I don't know that he necessarily needed one or wanted that.
Yeah. Agreed. I would say so. Right. Like. So.
Now, obviously guys like Andrade regretted it at some point. maybe a guy like Malachi Black regrets it a little bit because it's not what he thought it was going to be when he left, when he, couldn't get back into WWE, right? Or like he was released and they didn't want him back. Maybe those guys a little bit different, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like it's kind of tough to tell where like all this could go, right? Like it's but at the same time, like it could definitely give like poor people for them to just kind of roll with. So,
Right.
but I'm happy with who they have now, and we'll see where it goes from here. Was there anything else you wanted to add on this day after special? Now that we no longer have football, so now we could probably do this a little bit more frequent.
No.
All right. Well, that's
Nothing
episode
bad.
whatever I said it was. Follow up with a Rumble. Our Twitter is gonna be more active now that I actually got it back and got it reset. Yeah, and I'm gonna try and reach out to a local promotion again too, just to see if there's anything that we can do when they go back to their bigger shows. But till then, probably within the week or so, we'll be back. Adios, everybody.
Goodbye.
Get wild.